We have a full agenda of business this morning, and I intend that we progress this effectively. I'll take the opportunity to remind everyone that the meeting won't be recorded. Rona, could I have the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Leader. We have apologies from Councillor Carruthers, Councillors Diggle, Dykes, Gilroy and Smith. And as we start the meeting, Councillor McGregor's not yet here.
Okay, can we move on to item, 2 is declarations of interest, members? No declarations. Item 3, minute of the meeting of 22nd November. This is up for approval. I'll approve.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to... Sorry. I'm happy to second it, but I'd like to draw the committee's attention to item 21 on that minute. And the recommendation that we agreed at 21.4 was a late addition put before the committee, which hadn't been discussed by the Dumfries Common Good Subcommittee. The decision that was taken appeared to be a very simple one, but we've since discovered that what is actually envisaged may be different from what we understood when we took that decision. And I'm therefore asking this committee to agree that the implementation of the decision is halted to allow the Dumfries Common Good Subcommittee time to consider the position and, if necessary, to come back to this committee in March. Can we agree?
Okay, fine. Thanks for that. Sorry?
Could I possibly please just have some advice on that? I mean, would we normally do that for any other committee that suddenly said it didn't want to?
Can't hear you.
Would we do that for any other committee? I'd just like some advice as to... I mean, I see the principle I have no difficulty with, but let's talk it through as how this is actually happening. Would we normally do this in this manner?
There have been other instances where we have just suspended the implementation, to be clear on facts. That we're not reversing any decisions here, we're just suspending the implementation. It does appear that members may not have completely understood the facts, and that's no fault of members, and it was no fault of the officers. It was the information that was provided to us at that time, so we want to be absolutely clear that members fully understand the implications. And we do have a procedural error now, because that should have been with Dumfries Common Good Subcommittee to get their views on it before it came to P&R. So we're just trying to correct that procedural error as well.
Okay, moving on to item 4. Sorry.
Thank you. I mean, at the moment, though, this is just a minute. So this is...
The minute is correct.
The minute's correct, and Councillor Thompson, the other one, has basically said this needs to be looked at, and you've just explained it. But that's not really... I think I'm sort of sympathising with what Councillor Maitland's saying a wee bit. There is a sort of... It's informative what Councillor Ted Thompson said, but really, have we just made a decision? Or what?
We've made a decision to suspend the decision until we get further information, and until we fix the procedural element as well.
Leader, is it not to suspend the implementation of the decision?
Yeah, suspend the implementation.
Yeah. Right, until we get further information coming back through this, the Common Good Sub back to here.
Yes. Yeah. The minute's correct. The minute's been correct. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
God's
Item 4. No, moving on now, Jane. I think we've had enough. Okay.
Later then, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Item 4, which is Local Government Finance Settlement, report by Head of Finance and Procurement. This report gives members an overview of the finance settlement for local government for 2017-18, announced by the Scottish Government on the 15th of December 2016. Members will recall that at full council on the 15th of December, we were informed that the settlement would likely mean a further reduction in the resources available to our council, and that further checking was required before the scale of this could be confirmed. We were also provided with information on the likely impact of a range of reductions. Since then, the Scottish Government have published their draft budget, and in fact it will be debated today in the Scottish Parliament. The proposal will mean a £327 million reduction in Council's core grants. The Scottish Government have argued that an extra £107 million has been provided for social care within the health budget, but this is ring-fenced for the living wage and new requirements. They have also argued that an extra £120 million has been provided to schools through the Attainment Fund. However, this funding will go direct to schools, so neither can be used to offset the £327 million cut in direct council grants. So it's still £327 million. The consequence is set out in paragraph 3.6 of the report, with the confirmation that the settlement as it currently stands will see our funding reduced by 4.4%, bringing a funding gap in the next financial year to almost £20 million, before we take any decisions on council tax. The settlement, as in previous years, also comes with conditions. These are highlighted in the report at paragraphs 3.8 to 3.10. The following report and agenda provides more detail for our consideration on the impact of next year's budget. In his letter to COSLA President David O'Neill on the 15th of December, the Cabinet Secretary Derek Mackay demanded that any council not willing to accept the settlement should write to him by 13th of January, although this was later extended to the 20th of January, and that leaders should write. I wrote to Mr Mackay and made clear our council was not in a position to accept or reject any settlement, as our budget has not yet been agreed. I also politely pointed out to him that neither has his budget, and in fact, unless he changes his budget, it won't be. The changes may or may not impact on any settlement to our council, and therefore, until he has a budget, and we have a budget, this council is not in a position to accept or reject any of his proposals. And that's what is in the letter. Paul and Julian are here to answer any questions. Members? Jane?
I've got a couple of questions. If I could just ask the one at 310. It's the issue about maintaining the pupil-teacher ratio. I mean, we've been told and read in the papers and seen briefings to say that indeed not all individual councils have actually maintained that. And I'm curious to know whether they all signed up to say, yes, we agree with your suggestion, and then busily did something about their ratios, and was there any sanction?
No, there was no sanctions as far as I'm aware. It's quite a confusing issue, because I was at a meeting of COSLA, and there was an outline of the budget that came through. I can't say an awful lot because it was taken in private, but within that, I did hear that there's no sanctions going to be on the on this proposed draft budget. So there's no sanctions. That's what I heard. I can't go into any more detail than that because it was a private meeting. Paul, you want to add anything to that?
Just really to back up what the leader says, my understanding is there will be no sanctions, and I think that the main reason for that is that the ratio was maintained at a national level, and that's the requirement that the Scottish Government have. The previous year, when our ratio changed, the ratio had not been maintained at a national level, and therefore the authorities that did have a change in the ratio had to fine, and that's what happened to us in that year.
Jeff, same point.
Just as a bit of background, the Minister was asked to take into account the problem with recruiting teachers. There just aren't sufficient teachers there, particularly in rural areas. I mean, Dumfries and Galloway have been fortunate in terms of being able to maintain our pupil-teacher ratio, but in other rural areas, Fife, Leeds to mind, they've got a huge number of vacant posts, which no matter what they try to do, they can't fill because there aren't sufficient teachers there.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Going to page 25 and 24. In plain, simple, easy to understand language the public will understand, never mind anybody else. The figure that's in the last column on page 25 for Dumfries and Galloway says 283.598, which includes an additional funding of 1.635. The question is, did we get that 1.635? Therefore, our total for the 16-17 will be 283.598. And conversely, for page 24, again, for plain and easy understanding, the figure that's in the last column is 274,966, which is made up of a whole lot of stuff, but there's a ring fencing of 5,185. Plain and simple language. Will we get the 5.185, and did we get the 1.635?
Yes.
So therefore, the two totals that are in the last columns in each of the 2 pages are, one, the accurate figure for this year's budget, and depending on the outcome of today and following things in the Scottish Parliament, would be the figure that we would get next year.
Yes.
Thanks, Leader. Back to page 13, 3.5, the needs-based formula. Now, I notice it is based on population, pupil numbers, etc. Does the formula take adequate cognizance of the elderly demographic in Dumfries and Galloway? The fact that we have a very large elderly population.
Yes, that is taken into account in the formula, and that's one of the indicators that are used in terms of the distribution. I think the only thing I would say in relation to that is that the GE, which is used to determine the distribution, doesn't fully match the level of spending required. So the distribution formula takes into account relative shares of the elderly population and other groups. However, that doesn't result in necessarily pound for pound movements in cash to address that.
Are you suggesting, Paul, that it doesn't take adequate account?
The distribution formula does take appropriate account of the change. Obviously, in terms of whether we have enough funding to address the needs, that's a separate issue.
Willie?
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to hope, or to put forward that I hope the committee will support or endorse the action you have taken in terms of the letter that you have written to the Finance Minister, in terms that neither have you accepted or rejected anything as yet, given that there is a debate today and a vote today at Holyrood. And I would hope that the remarks made last week by Anna Sarwar, and indeed the remarks made today by Kezia Dugdale, that we see the Scottish Government then going along with it, with the remarks, and that we may find that they will not reduce the local government settlement by the 300 or 327 that you referred to earlier. I would hope that's the best possible result we could get for this authority and the other 31 authorities, because quite frankly, you know, the report here, enough is enough.
Andy?
Thanks very much. I have two points, Leader. One at 3.6, the floor at 4.4%. Just, it's a yes/no answer. This really is that decided because of a decision made at COSLA that we would be in there, and it was the COSLA leaders who voted this through. COSLA voted this through. That's why we're 4.4 rather than the 3 point whatever it should be for us. That's the first thing. And the second question, I refer to Jeff's remark about teachers, and he's quite right about the, maintaining, it's hard to get teachers. It's also hard to get people like social workers, some other things here. But the question really is, are we looking at the retention of these very, very valuable staff? Right? And what effect does the number of staff who are leaving here, right, have on the recruitment? Because we haven't really looked at that in any great detail, at least as a committee. I can't recollect that. That work maybe have been going on behind the scenes, but we've had no report back on that. because I'm taking you back a few years ago that some of the longer serving councillors will remember we had the same problem in social work a number of years ago, and we worked out if we can retain what we had, then we recruit, and then I looked after the current staff possibly better, right? Then the recruitment also improved at the same time. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise, and it's a worthwhile thing that Jeff brought forward, and we need to note that, yes, but it's the reasons why it's difficult for us, and to always blame it on rurality, right, isn't the only reason we can't get staff, and we need to address that, and we need to address it as a matter of urgency.
In terms of the operation of the floor, that's something that is agreed jointly between COSLA and the Scottish Government. It continues to be supported by the Settlement and Distribution Group and by COSLA leaders, but the level of the floor is determined by the Scottish Government itself. In terms of the teacher, I think probably the question was probably directed elsewhere, although I'm aware that we do have a grow your own policy in the Dumfries and Galloway that's operating to address some of those issues, but I suspect that may be added to by others. Thank you.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered if somebody could refresh my failing memory. I remember, or I don't remember very well actually, education a year or so or more ago that something about our pupil-teacher ratios were better than the national average, but we were being forced to take on more teachers. There was some kind of anomaly. I just wonder if anyone remembers it and if somebody could maybe refresh what that was about. Thank you.
So just you, Jane.
I think the government targets 13.7, the pupil-teacher ratio. I think ours is 12.7, 12.8, so it's well below the national average. But because in the past we've actually been fined because our ratio changed slightly on the census day, which I think is in October, so we were effectively fined £303,000 last year because our teacher number decreased on that particular day from 1,521 to 1,506. So to actually maintain that sort of accuracy, that's 0.1% change on that one particular day, and we were fined £303,000 for that. So it's a policy which doesn't have any rationale behind it at all. It's just a number which has been fixed on by the Scottish Government for whatever reason. As far as we're aware, we haven't been told we can alter it. So what we need to do is to actually try and maintain that number, and it's costing us an awful lot of money in order to do that, which is diverting resources.
Okay, Paul, just for my clarity here, the couple of questions asked, one by Andy, one by Jim. The 5 million, that doesn't include any pressures or additionality.
Can you just check what 5 million you're referring to?
The difference in figures, sorry.
The 5 million, I think that Councillor McClung was referring to is additional specific grant funding that's being received in relation to the Schools Attainment Fund and the Criminal Justice allocation.
Okay, and yeah, I think you said the other one that the Scottish Government determined the query for Andy. Okay, thanks.
No, with respect, Leader, it's agreed with Scottish Government after representation from COSLA. That's my understanding. It's a joint thing between COSLA and Scottish Government. It's not Scottish Government.
No, well, can you just explain that again then?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a joint thing. The operation of the floor is agreed between Scottish Government and COSLA leaders. The level of floor is set by the Scottish Government. The report doesn't say anything about whether the operation of the floor is a good or bad thing. It purely explains to members the impact of the floor of the Council's funding allocation.
Hello? Yep. Item 5, which is financial strategy. The report sets out the updated budget position for 2017-18 for consideration in preparing their budget proposals. As members will know, around £10 million of cuts for 2017-18 were identified as part of the 2016-17 budget, although all of these have still to be fully agreed for this year's budget. The Scottish Government have increased council tax in the region by £2.4 million through the council tax multiplier, and councillors will, if they choose, be able to increase it by a further 3%, raising £1.9 million, leaving over £5.5 million of savings or extra revenue still to be identified to reach the £20 million of cuts imposed by the Scottish Government. This is on top of the £70 million of savings over the past 3 years and means that this council is faced with very difficult choices in the weeks ahead. We've also reminded in the report of the budget timetable and process. Paul and Julian are here to answer any questions arising from the report. I'll open the meeting to members. Jane?
Leader, I am a substitute member of the IJB, so I declare that. I don't think it's any requirement to leave the room, but I would like to know if there is any update on the issue of the 2.4 million. Are we in negotiations? What is happening with that 2.4 million? It's a really critical figure.
Yeah. I suppose that, that to me that's an issue for each individual group to decide what they want out of the IJB and the actual consequences of doing that. If they want to find out, for example, how to take the 2.4, what would be the probable impact, but in the end up, it's the IJB that actually make the decision, and we can't influence that. The IJB will make a decision on how their budget is, and what steps they've got to take for their savings. There's additional complications with CREST savings within that, and what we don't want to be doing is, making savings for the other parts that we don't have to. But that's up to individual groups to sort out their own budget, I think. It's not actually one for us to determine.
May I come back? Yes, but as everybody knows, what happens with respect to the IJB will have an effect on services which this council finds very important, very important. And what I'm really after is whether we are in negotiations with trying to align what's happening. I really want to know whether we are working in partnership with the IJB to attempt to make this process as easy as possible. I mean, what we don't want to go into is having each individual group coming up with proposals which are particularly difficult or particularly easy and don't need to be particularly difficult or particularly easy. It would be much, much more helpful if we were quite clearly working in partnership with our colleagues right across the community planning partnership.
I think that, just as I said, Jane, and you will know this, being a member of the IJB, that I could say, I could say to the IJB, I could say that, right, I'm now going to take something, there's £200,000, as long as you don't do that, right? In reality, they could say, that's great, I'll have that £200,000, but in reality, I'm going to take it because it's my decision, it's IJB's decision. There will be talks, and I'm not saying, that we are a partnership as such. We won't be trying to get the best services, and ultimately, that's services to the public. And it will be each individual group's decision about, what they want to put forward as a saving through the IJB, if any, of the £2.4 million. So it will be their decision and their judgment, if you want, how they carry that out. Members. Andy?
Thanks very much. Other than Ted and I are the only two IGB members here today. Just to be clear, the 2.4 million or whatever it is if it doesn't go through today, the Scottish Government will have a knock-on effect on us as well here, because the 2.4 million that Paul is referring to here is in the proposed settlement to through the NHS to the IGB. Therefore, we're allowed to recover that amount of money, up to that amount of money, from our contribution to the IGB. That's my understanding of it. And And we had a very, very useful seminar on last Thursday afternoon as an IGB and board members there, and that was explained very, very clearly by Katie Lewis, who I know Paul has been working very closely with to get this across. So we need to be sure here. And the other thing, I have to say it, when the 5 of us are at the IGB, we are not there as Labour, SNP, Conservative or whatever. We are there as representatives of this council. So it is not a party issue and how parties think it should be. Different in the budget setting process if they don't want to utilise the whole 2.4 million leverage that we have. But I would suggest that would be political suicide for anybody not to use that leverage when the Scottish Government are proposing to put that amount of money through a different route to fund exactly what this council its contribution is, and we can save that amount of money. So I think that clarity needs to be there, and I'm going to suggest here when we actually, no disrespect to Paul, but we need somebody sometimes here when these finance things about the IGB are in, who is steeped in the IGB work, because Paul's got a lot more on his plate than just the IGB. So who could make that very, very clear. And I think it also would do another thing. It would also show a reporting back process for the finances of the IGB back to this council, either through this committee or to full council leader.
A couple of things. We have no authority over the IGB. You're not there as a council member. You're there as an IGB member. So, no, you didn't say that, no. But anyway, you're not. You said you're representative of the council. You're not. You're there as an IGB board member. You will make decisions, and I think I made that plain. You can make decisions completely contrary to what's in here, what's said in here. And as a member of the IGB, you're in. It's you can do that. And again, the £2.4 million, that's up to any individual group within the council to decide how much or all of it they want to take. And it's up to the IGB to decide, how that affects the IGB services within the IGB. It's not up to us to decide that. Graham?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Under 5.5, it says detailed work is currently being progressed with NHS colleagues on this, and given the significance of this issue in terms of overall budget setting, it is planned that a verbal update will be provided at this meeting and then subsequently backed up through provision of associated details to all groups. Now, I was expecting that verbal update to come from Paul, being our finance officer, and he's been suspiciously quiet on this particular issue.
He's not. To be fair, I haven't let him in yet. Paul?
Thanks, Leader. Yes, when we finalised this report, I hadn't anticipated getting the written advice out to all members in advance of today. That's why I referred to it, a verbal update. But I think it was Wednesday night that I wrote to all members to give further advice on the approach to considering the level of budget to be delegated to the IGB for next year. Just wanted to make sure all members have got that. Another thing I would add that although it is my advice, that has been prepared in consultation with colleagues in both NHS and the IGB. I'm happy to provide members and groups with any further assistance as they require in relation to that.
Okay, can we, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just a couple of questions. 5.6 in the report, it says less previously agreed savings of 9.193 million. In a previous report at this committee in November, there was a potential shortfall of 1.51 million for the agreed savings of 10.7 million. So I take it we're now actually accepting that it's not a potential shortfall. That 1.51 million isn't going to be attained for the budget that was passed earlier in the year. Second thing, pure, simple terms that the public would understand. In the last item, I asked about the 2 columns in pages 24 and 25, and I got the answer yes to that. I see Paul smiling. In the public's understanding, that means there's a shortfall of 8.632 million for what we get for the Scottish Government. Never mind what you have to do as an accountant and all the rest of it. Public understanding will be the shortfall is 8.632 because that's what the figures say.
Yes, in terms of the first question, 9193, Councillor McClung is correct. The November report that we brought to this committee explained to members the deliverability of previously agreed savings, and in that report we informed members that the figure had been reduced from 10.7 to 9.193, so that's what we're now reflecting in the budget papers. In terms of the question in relation to the finance settlement, and Councillor McClung is right at a very high level in terms of it's an £8.6 million difference between those two figures. But if you look at page 36 of your paper, sorry I'm going back to the previous report, but if you look at page 36 of your papers, it's important to get a like-for-like comparison of last year's settlement and this year's settlement in order to get a fair estimation of the level of funding reduction. There's some things that are in last year's settlement that aren't in this year's, there's some things that are in this year's that weren't in last year's, and that table there explains to members the movements and shows that a like-for-like movement in our grant level is £12.451 million of a reduction. So I hope that explains that for members.
Yeah, I fully understand, having had previous communication with Paul, how the 12.451 million is actually arrived at. But I'm saying for the members of the public that look at the papers, the shortfall is 8.6 million, no 12.5. That's all I'm saying. When you look at the figures, that's what the public will look like. They will not understand unless they've got some sort of qualification or they've actually asked an accountant how we managed to get 12.451.
I think, I mean, as I've explained previously, it's important to have a like-for-like comparison to settlement levels. And I think what I'm trying to do in the report is explain to members what the impact is of the movement in the settlement on the level of savings that the Council requires to identify. And that's £12.451 million.
Thank you. Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2 and 3? Okay. Moving on to item 6. Further development capital investment strategy. When we set our 10-year capital investment strategy and 3-year priority capital programmes as part of the overall financial strategy, similar to our revenue budget, we agreed a process of implementation, monitoring and update would be required. This report provides updates to the agreed strategy reflecting the details of the finance settlement, what the project allocation would be for flood protection schemes in Newton, Stewart and Langholm, taking account of Scottish Government's grant contributions if members chose to agree those as part of their budget proposals later this month. The Scottish Government draft budget includes no increase in capital for local government this year, which is deeply disappointing given the fact that Scottish Government have received a 10.3% capital increase and additional borrowing powers of £450 million. The repayment to local government of the £150 million removed from the budget in 2016-17 by the Scottish Government as part of the reprofiling has been put back another year. The capital budget may or may not change when the Scottish Government agrees the final budget. This report is simply for information and for noting, as we agreed as a council to set the capital budget at the same time as the revenue budget. Paul is here to answer any questions. Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and there's reference to on page 54 and indeed page 53 to the Stranraer waterfront regeneration, where it's factually correct in terms of the EEI committee taking a decision in December to come forward with a report this say there June 2017 on the full business case or cases. We have agreed to put the £80,000 in to look at the, as you see in page 53, for ground investigation. But going alongside that is the East Pier, where it currently runs at some market failure of anything up to £14 million. And it's really just to see if Paul could give some indication as to what the expectation will be of this council in terms of the Stranraer waterfront regeneration, in terms of what the council may have to put forward, where any discussions I've had with the Chief Executive have been around that to bring the East Pier up to a saleable asset could be in the region of some 40 to 50 million pound, and that's before anything is actually put on top of it on the East Pier. And we have got, before the last election, John Swinney, as then the finance, the cabinet secretary, given a commitment of some 6 million, which falls well short of what could be required for the essential Stranraer waterfront regeneration. Is Paul any indication of figures, notwithstanding that the full business case is still to have come forward in terms of the council's contribution liability?
Thanks, Chip. I think that's obviously a really important question, and I think that's part of the detailed work that we're doing at the moment in preparation for that full business case and report to come to the EEI committee in the summer. There is significant uncertainty at the minute in terms of the overall cost of the project and overall funding package in terms of Scottish Government contributions, other funding sources, amounts already in our capital investment strategy attached to economic development, and what other monies the council may have to put in. What I'm doing in this report is basically just making sure that members have this as an awareness in terms of any capital investment decisions we're taking at the minute, what that leaves in terms of funding available to be allocated at a future date. So it's important that members are aware of this potential significant commitment coming forward, but unfortunately I can't really give you a detailed estimate at this stage of the level of council contribution that might be required.
But in that, Chair, appreciating the explanation given by Paul there in terms of just to make us aware. But, you know, the period of June 2017 will be the end of the 2-year exclusivity period. And it feels to the people of Stranraer as the biggest stakeholder that it's just limping along, nothing's happening, nothing's being done. There's no real feedback to elected members or indeed the public to any significance. And if there is any way that as the policy and resources, this could be accelerated in terms of the awareness that Paul has just referred to, so that, you know, we're not just waiting until June 2017, but that there is some indication as to responsibility and liability. Is there any way this can be accelerated?
Unfortunately, I can't really give you any further information at this stage. Really, what I'm doing in this report is just ensuring that members are aware of this commitment coming forward when considering their investment decisions. In terms of the progress of the project itself, I need to speak to colleagues to get further information on that.
I think there's to say in the report there'll be a full business case and complete funding delivery strategy for it coming forward in June, is it? June. Jane first.
Thank you. Forgive me, I'm sort of slightly struggling with this. I know that this is provided as a kind of explanatory report, but have I got this right then, that we decide the capital budget at the same time as we decide the main budget, but on the other hand, if the whole thing is going to be laid in front of us only in June, I have to look at things like, you know, Learning Town and the White Sands project, these big projects that have the potential to grow, and at what stage? Well, yes, somebody's mentioned the Kirkcudbright Art Gallery, and I'm very happy to point out that this council has capped that, and rightly so. Rightly so. It's capped that project and said thus far and no further. But I don't see the same approach at the moment being adopted with other projects. And what members don't have is laid out in front of them here. If we find ourselves having to add an extra £500,000 for the Dumfries White Sands, what therefore cannot come forward? It's that level of decision making that that isn't absolutely crystal clear, I think, for members to take that sort of decision. So through you, Leader, could I possibly ask when we might, I suppose, have that level of detail and clear explanation to members to say, look, do you realise that if you do not say on some of these projects thus far and no further, you will find yourselves paying for them on a much further and longer profile and higher costs on an annual basis, which means that you cannot do something else. Unless I've misunderstood. Happy to be told that.
Yeah, Councillor Maitland's absolutely right that we members agree the capital investment strategy at the same time as they set the budget. In terms of the other elements, absolutely the Coogbe Art Gallery project is capped, as are the other projects in our capital investment strategy. They have a formally agreed budget by members, and that's the level they need to operate at. We have had occasions where we've had to come back to this committee previously to ask for increases because of issues that have arisen, including the Coogbe Art Gallery project, but the level of budget that is in the capital investment strategy at the moment for the agreed projects is the level of budget that should not be exceeded. In terms of the issue about White Sands, Stranraer Waterfront, Priest Learning Town, I think what I'm trying to say in this report is that these are future investment requirements that members will need to consider. I think what I'm probably saying, perhaps not that subtly in the report, is we shouldn't be spending too much at this stage. We need to leave some flexibility for members to take future decisions when the details of those projects come forward.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just looking at the two appendix, which is the capital investment strategy approved at full council, 29th of February 2016, at page 56, and the following one that's been put before us today on page 57. We are being asked to note further corporate priority projects between 18 and 19 and 24-25. Well, the budget available will increase from what was agreed at council in February to what we're being asked to note here by 11.75 million. Where are we getting this 11.75 million that's going to be going into the corporate priority projects? And also as regarding the capital settlement, sorry to go back again, Paul, page 32 on the budget stuff that was sent out, it says that the final position of the 16-17 capital settlement was 21.35 million, and on the page before that it says the capital settlement to be paid in 17-18 will be 22.37. Are both those figures accurate, and if so, does that mean we're getting £1 million more capital the next financial year than what we were this financial year?
In terms of the first question, the reason why we've been able to increase the level of funding available for corporate priority projects is that increase in grant funding that's been received as part of the settlement. That increase doesn't relate to an increase in the total level of funding being made available to local government. What's actually happened is that funding that was previously in specific grants, mainly for the transfer of management development funding for affordable housing projects, which is previously only allocated to Edinburgh and Glasgow, that's actually come back in. It's no longer being used for that purpose. It's come back in to the general settlement and allocated to all councils. And as I've reflected in the report, we get an increase in grant as a result of that, and that's what's reflected in the figures. And that's the reason why we've been able to increase the level of corporate priority project funding in the second appendix that you've referred to. The other point I would make in terms of the corporate priority project funding, what that is it's funding that is not allocated to date and will be available for members to allocate when the appropriate time.
So basically the two figures that I quoted for pages 32 and 31 are accurate, and we're getting one. This next oncoming year is an extra £1 million.
The baseline increase is 585,000 in terms of, it's a bit like the question you asked on revenue. In terms of the unhypothecated like-for-like comparison, it's a £585,000 benefit. That there's other elements in there which make the £1 million difference. But the figures are accurate, yes.
Jim.
Thanks, Leader. With reference to paragraph 4.6, page 53, having twice witnessed the main shopping street of Newton Stewart flooded within the last 5 years, I would just like to highlight the urgency of including these two flood protection schemes within the capital investment strategy. It is urgently needed, certainly in the case of Newton Stewart.
Just to say, obviously that's a decision for members that you'll be looking to take at full council in February in terms of the approach on those schemes, but Appendix 2 does reflect those in the programme for members' information at this stage.
Graham.
Yeah, it's along, thank you, Leader. It's along the same kind of lines, but I see the Newton Stewart flood prevention scheme as a projected spend in 7.85 million. Now, we know that there's nothing projected for this year. There's some for next year, etc., and for the next sort of 4 years, up to 2020, 2021. But as we know from the White Sands project, once you go into the public consultation process, these things can slip an odd day, or maybe 10 years now and again. But is that in order? Will those sums, once we go into public consultation, and if they don't like what they see the first time round, and we have to redraw it and spend time bringing it together, bring a subsequent scheme together, can these figures be pushed along a year or two as time progresses, or does that money have to be spent in those particular years?
I think one of the benefits of the approach that members have taken in terms of development of the capital investment strategy is that you now look at a 10-year time frame, so you can look at projects over that period, and we recognise that there is a degree of movement from year to year, and that's something we'll continue to bring members information on in terms of where project timescales are subject to change.
Colin.
Chair, page 56 and 57, I'm sure there's a glaringly obvious explanation, but I can't see it. The White Sands scheme went from 3293 to 23,293 on the following page. Just wondering why. And there's nothing allocated in page 56 for 2019-20, but on page 57 there's £14,000 has appeared. Just an explanation, thanks.
Yes, apologies members, should actually have pointed that out in terms of a difference in presentation. What we've previously done in terms of the flood prevention schemes was only reflect the net cost of the project in the capital investment strategy. But given the level of these schemes, in fact we've got more of them now, I think it's more informative to show both the gross cost and income that's coming in to support those schemes. So actually on page 58 of your papers there's a breakdown of the funding allocations for each of the flood prevention projects, the level of Scottish Government funding that's being provided to support those projects, and the Council's net contribution. So that's a kind of a more realistic comparison. But apologies, should have pointed that out initially.
Okay, we'll be going to the recommendations, but I think overall, if we'd got our share of the 10.3% capital that the Scottish Government had, and also if they did keep to their promise and pay back the £150 million, we'd have been a lot better off with the capital budget than what we are now, instead of reneging it. And there's no guarantee that it won't renege it next year as well. Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2? We would consider 3. Item 7. This report provides a summary of forecast expenditure for the Council up to the end of December 2016 and the measures being taken to manage budgets across services. It also provides a forecast of year-end general fund balances and funding available to support investment and required savings through the Change Fund, highlighting the challenges of future levels of funding to support savings in future years. The report also updates on progress on delivery of the agreed savings, and officers have continued to highlight the challenges and risks associated with the unprecedented level of cuts we have to achieve this year and the potential impact and mitigation of these. All measures are being taken to ensure our budget position is balanced for 2016-17, with any costs in relation to the delivery in 2016-17 agreed savings likely to be offset by the funds built up in the Change Fund. Paul and Gillian are here to answer any questions. Members? Okay, Andy.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, effectively, this is a position where we are just now in this current financial year. The bit I'm kind of interested in here is at 3.15, 3.15. So I'm just trying to see if my reading of this is correct. This year's anti-poverty strategy has been funded from last year, and we haven't touched this year's funding allocation from the budget, right? That beggars belief, I have to say, because it was carried forward from last year to this year. Right? My understanding was as it went through the budget, because I think even all the budgets said that should be the case, that this was a priority for this council. So how can we be underspent when significant numbers of people are using food banks? Food banks are struggling to make ends meet. There's a number of things in here. So really, I appreciate it's not for you to answer, Paul, because you didn't manage this entirely within your remit. But what have we been doing, right, that we underspend on something that is such a high priority in this region? It was one of your flagship policies, Ronnie, you know, and why is it underspent? Because that's what effectively what this is. It's a massive underspend amongst the most vulnerable people in our region.
This is a figure that we've got an anti-poverty policy, and we're working towards an anti-poverty policy. That's like you, Andy, saying that, you know, we've got £10 million to spend today, tomorrow. Why have we not spent that £10 million? There are procedures in place. I think we've got a new anti-poverty officer that's working through to actually deal with a coordinated approach. It's not off-the-cuff remarks like that, Andy, that's very helpful. Have you got anything to add to that, Paul?
The only thing I would say is that I think I'm right in saying that members received a report on anti-poverty strategy at the December meeting of full council. I think the anti-poverty officer that Leader referred to had just been appointed at that stage, and one of the issues that's reflected in the report is that a further detail would come forward to members in terms of potential uses of that funding. So I think that's something that we brought forward in early course.
I think you agreed with that, Andy.
Actually, the reason I'm asking the question, Ronnie, is because tomorrow at SIPL we've got some organisations coming forward in commissions, right, where we expect them, right, to actually have outcomes and outputs for the money that we give them. Right, we've got this money over there. What are actually the outcomes for the people who are in poverty? Right, and having a new member of staff isn't an outcome for the people on the breadline or the people who are standing in the queue at the food bank. That's the question I'm asking. Is so why have we got an underspend? And why is it taking us a year, right, to actually get somebody into post? Now, it's a quite reasonable question, and the public have a right to know why it's taking so long and how that's not been taken forward.
Councillor Ferguson, you'll recall that the strategy for the anti-poverty strategy was agreed by full council, and there's a 6-monthly report, and as Paul indicated, there is an update was presented at last full council, and there was quite a debate to that, and Councillor Scobie indeed had raised some concerns about making sure outcomes were achieved and that we could see those things on the ground. Members have made decisions about allocation of some of the monies, and those have been brought to full council for decision. And I understand from the team who are been working on this that the groups of people who are experiencing poverty and who are needing our help are informing a number of those investments, and they will continue to do so. And so we would expect further clarity in the update report that comes forward for members, and indeed further investments to be made by members in that regard.
Well, I just want to point out to members in 3.18, as I did at the budget, that kind of rather slippery use of the word budgeted use of the change fund, all that meant was that was a balancing figure. It hasn't done anything. It's just been produced and used as £500,000, £462,000 out of the change fund, and sits there as another problem that we've got this coming year. And if you add that to what we haven't delivered, the 1.3 million, we're starting from a real problem. Not anything easy. We're starting from quite a way back. And so leading on from that, I really sort of, I suppose, beside myself at the whole business of energy efficiency measures. We budgeted for 420,000 and we simply haven't made them. 145,000. And that strikes me as something which really we should have pushed harder on. I know that all elected members actually want that to happen, and I don't understand why it hasn't been more forthcoming, because it struck me as something that should happen. It's good for the world, it's good for our budgets, it's good for staff, there's no issue there, and yet what is happening, Leader, over these particular savings?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, no, I share the members' disappointment regarding the kind of the underperformance in terms of the delivery of these savings. There has been delays in bringing schemes forward. That there is progress being made at the minute. I know there is a report coming to tomorrow's meeting of the Civil Committee on energy efficiency measures for schools. But there is a recognition that we do need to do more, and that's something we're working with the service with at the minute to try and ensure that level of saving is fully delivered in the new year, and also look for other opportunities to contribute to savings requirements for going forward.
Okay, Willie.
Yeah, Chair, and just to the remarks made by Andy and then Lorna in terms of my remarks at the last full council when we did discuss the anti-poverty strategy. And I think that it's not a matter of just having a strategy. We need to put outcomes, performance indicators, so that we can see that we are, having an impact on what is perhaps the most vulnerable in our communities, and that is only reflected in the food banks and the number of people and children who are using them. I think Colin Grant was to come forward with those outcomes so that we can see we are making a difference with the people out there. But could I refer to pages 66 and 67 of the report, where I have serious concerns about achieving the savings that are identified in this report. And indeed, I have been following the operational efficiency of the kinship care, and that has never moved. The outstanding work is none, and working process have been amended to include a continued review of placements. I have raised issues with the head of legal services, with Rona, in terms of the council's kinship carers policy. I have written to the head of children's services yesterday, indeed, as to whether we are following the policy, and asked for the report to come back, because I have dealt with a number of cases coming forward where it looks like we have not followed the policy. And really, from the head of legal and indeed the monitoring officer's position, I would hope we would be looking at that to see if there is any indication of perhaps malpractice in the application of the policy. So in that respect, I think we are going to have difficulty in terms of the pressure on that particular budget that is continually reported as outstanding work, none. But I will wait on the answers to my questions, and hopefully well, no, hopefully I will seek a report on that to go to the Service Committee. Likewise, on other two aspects of this report, and one is reference to support and learner service review, and the other part to that in page 67, where it refers to the reduction in mitigation funding for ASL and other educational savings. And only within the last week or so, I met with a number of parents whose children have learning difficulties. And what was admitted at the particular meeting by a senior official of the council within education with responsibility for the delivery of ASL services is that we haven't got it right in terms of the assessed needs and to identify how many hours that individual may need. In the absence of a proper assessed needs and not identifying, then it is difficult to see whether the service is being delivered, and it may be that it's driven by need on the part of the council to find savings when it's unrealistic in terms of the impact that is having on, again, vulnerable children in our community. And I think these are two areas that I would hope that Paul will look at and give some scrutiny to in terms of the service delivery to vulnerable parts of the community, perhaps the most vulnerable in our community. I would hope that Paul would do that as an action plan from this meeting.
Just to continue to work closely with the service managers in the department to ensure the appropriate delivery of the agreed measures.
Jim?
Thanks, Leader. Paragraph 3.4. The under recovery of planning application fees. Now, this is running at over £400,000, Paul. Could you give us some background as to why there is such a discrepancy?
The under recovery is due to the number of applications that are being received has fallen. As you may recall, over the past few years, this has been an area of difficulty over the last few financial years, and that they're still continuing to experience that at the moment. However, as part of the next year's budget, the fees or the level of fees that they'll be able to apply for building warrants and planning applications is anticipated to increase, and we think that shortfall will be covered by those measures in the next financial year. So this should hopefully be the last year that we should see those difficulties.
So it is mainly down to a reduction in the number of applications. Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Paragraph 320, page 62. It's identifying a further amount of 259,000 detailed in Appendix 4 that are no longer required to address the originally identified purposes and can therefore be released to the change fund. And then it goes on and actually outlines in Appendix 4 just some sort of confirmation here. Are we being asked to move these funds to the change fund now, or have we been asked to consider them for the future? Because I have a particular problem with a couple of them, those being the community winter resilience and the removal of funding for derelict buildings. Just, I want to know, are we actually moving it just now, or have we been asked to consider removing it?
The amounts for the community winter resilience and the EEI reserves are not included within the area at the moment. Those are highlighted as areas where we're aware that there are areas which aren't fully utilised and which may be reviewed at the end of the financial year.
Yeah, thanks for that. That kind of sets my mind at rest on that one. I'm sorry to get back to the anti-poverty strategy again, but it's somewhat disappointing that we seem to be underspent on that one, when next week at our area committee we have got a food bank coming for area discretionary funding, so as they can move premises, because the premises they're in at the minute they're having to move out of, yet they're coming to the area committee to make the building that they're going into fit for purpose. Yet there's apparently £1 million in anti-poverty funding. Well, one of the fastest and easiest identifications of poverty are food banks. Yet area committee money is being used and no poverty funding.
I think that's what area committee grants are for. You know, if you feel there's a need in the area, you use that need in the area. And, you know, the anti-poverty strategy is an overall strategy. You know, it's not just for one committee. And I know you're trying to make politics out of this, but I think it's more important than politics. I think, you know, you've got to have the procedures in place. You've got to tackle anti-poverty as a strategic element as well. It's not just picking things up that you think you can make a political point on. The area committee has always had that ability to make funding available for that, and quite rightly so. And if you want to do that or you don't want to do that, that is entirely your position. Can go to the recommendations. Can we note 1, 2 and 3? Okay. If we can go to item 8, this report gives member an overview of the financial performance of corporate services for 2016-17. I'm pleased to note the projected position for the service and the continued efforts of managers and staff to deliver a balanced budget. Lorna is here to deal with any questions. Members? Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, 2 and 3? And 4. And 4, sorry. If we can go to item 9, which this report gives members information on the progress so far in the Council's capital investment strategy for the current financial year. The Council has agreed to invest nearly £50 million this year alone in local facilities, infrastructure and schools. Even in these times of constraint and difficult decisions on budgets, through tight control and focus on our priorities, we are ensuring local people are seeing these key investments happening and reaping the benefits they bring to local communities. This continues to be an important part of our contribution to support our local economy and delivering projects which are integral to our council priorities, supporting local trades and businesses and hundreds of jobs locally. As at the end of September, the council has spent over £30 million of this year's programme, and we forecast this being fully utilised within the financial year. This shows considerable progress in the last few years in the efficient way we invest in full our capital in crucial projects for the local community and our economy. I am sure I speak on behalf of all members in recording our appreciation for the effective way staff and our partners are delivering projects such as our new schools. Paul is here to answer any questions arising from the report. Members? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Sorry to take this down to ward level, but on page 93, public toilet provision, the Rome programme, it lists a whole lot of toilets that have been done. There's a project in my ward that is kind of stalled at the minute in Cairnryan, and I'm just wanting the assurance that that will still be funded when the decision is taken through the public consultation, that the funding will be there for the work to be carried out.
Please.
Thanks, Leader. There had previously been an allocation for that specific project. Since nothing had progressed, money has been reprioritised elsewhere within the programme. But that's not to say that once a decision has been made on what's required, that couldn't come back into the programme. Clearly that would have to come within the spending proposals for future years to this committee.
It's a specific question on page 106. It concerns the slippage on ICT network infrastructure brackets security. And I'm just curious about what this actually is and what the impact of slippage would be. I wonder whether this has any sort of effect upon public access to Wi-Fi in public buildings. maybe I could have a little bit of explanation on that, please.
Leader, there is slippage on the security side of things. That's predominantly down to our firewall infrastructure. It has taken us longer than anticipated to understand what the configurations of those firewalls need to be, particularly around the new prevent agenda, which is being raised through education. So there is a delay in procuring those, and the intention is that we procure them early next year. As far as public Wi-Fi goes, the security issue will not prevent that. It is in train, but it's probably 3 or 4 months away at the moment.
Sean?
Yeah, on page 93, it's really just to probably commend the council with regards to the libraries and customer service centre integration. As you can remember, this was a budget saving, but in the case of Eastriggs, which myself and Councillor Ogilvie went along to see the opening of after it was eventually done, we were struck by the work that's done there, and actually from a budget saving, we've actually got an enhanced and additional service in Eastriggs. In the past, there was just the library, but we've actually managed to provide a customer service centre there, and at the same time, it is actually, working with the local head teacher in the school, is actually provided security or additional security for the school. So it's really just to kind of record thanks for that project being completed.
Okay, other members? Can we note 1 and 2? Moving on to item 10, this report asks members to consider a transfer of Langholm Day Centre and the former library into community ownership for a nominal sum. Members of the Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee had recommended to us that we support this community transfer. The Council is committed to being inclusive and protecting our most vulnerable. The Communities Director at paragraph 315 also advised that the relevant application has been submitted and assessed by officers and concluded that this is viable and sustainable, and that by transferring ownership there will be a positive contribution to the well-being of the local community. Lease is here to answer any questions. Okay. Go ahead. Yep.
Thanks. I think I'm happy to move. I know the good work that this place does, but I know the plans for the future. Just move the recommendations.
Graham?
Yeah, no problem with this particular project, but this is a more generic question. We transfer buildings of all kinds to different groups within the communities. Now that's fine as long as the receiving group continues to operate. But as we know, these things can disappear as quick as they appear, or quicker than they appear. And I'm just wondering what happens in general terms if we've transferred a building to a community group of any description, and that community group, for whatever reason, disappears. What happens to that building? Does it automatically come back to the council? And who pays the pound to get it back?
I think the answer is yes. I don't know about the pound, but Louise?
We tried to write in terms and conditions into the disposal to make that happen, but occasionally we can run into issues depending on the specific constitution of the group. So if it was a charitable endeavour, for instance, they might have a constitution which requires them to put anything asset-wise back to another charity. And the other issue that we occasionally run into as well when finalising disposal terms is on any grant funding that group may be getting. So there can sometimes be restrictions where grant funders won't give them a grant unless they can demonstrate absolute clear title with limited restrictions. But we try as much as we can to put in something in that regard for something to revert back to the council if the group doesn't succeed in what it's trying to do.
Just quickly, my reason for asking the question is that we've got a community council, and there's a community council in my ward which has been negotiating or discussing anyway transfer of an asset, and within 3 days last week the community council disappeared. There's 4 or 5 key resignations, like chair, the vice chair, the treasurer, they all disappeared. And that's why I'm asking the question, Leader.
That's fine. Jane?
In the past, we've put, what we're doing is foregoing 75,000 or something. I don't know. That's the sort of general figure which is apparently in the air about what we are foregoing. And in the past, we have said to a community, yep, you must get it done by a certain time. And we've also actually, interestingly, asked the community to provide us with a business case. So I'm curious as to why there are sort of differing procedures. Would we have expected to have received some level of business case to show that this can be dealt with? Or is that not normal? And that's just a question. And as I say, knowing what's happened in the past, we have put time limits on in the past. Is that reasonable in this case?
And the group in this instance did work very closely with the Communities Department and provided them with information in terms of what they were planning to do, and some of that is appended to the report. It's entirely at the committee's discretion. I would suggest if you wish to put a time limit on it, that would be for you to decide.
You said at the start of this that the group had been in consultation and their business case and the sustainability all stack up. So why would we want, if you've already examined and they say, yeah, this is a goer, I don't know why we're teasing out any further information. Clearly, we don't know what's around the corner. Nobody can predict what's going to happen. But at the moment, it seems like it's a viable project. So I'm quite happy with that.
I think also in terms of this organisation, it's operated the service from these premises for a good number of years. I think where community organisations are being established to take over an asset and to prepare a business plan in that place, this is a functioning organisation which has sustained itself over that period of time. So there has been the regular due diligence, but it obviously has proved itself in terms of being able to sustain that over a time. So while it might appear lighter touch, that there has been that kind of engagement through both the health and social care and the communities department around this to make sure those things are aligned and they're appropriate.
Okay, Gail.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I would just add to that as well that it has been scrutinised quite carefully by area committee and with people who truly understand how the business functions there. And I have been out to visit it fairly recently, and they've already made significant improvements which would not have happened had it been under the management of the council. So I think they're doing a cracking job.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note the recommendations of the Annandale and Eskdale and agree to? Thank you. Item 11, this is Lisa football pitch at Whitehalls, Lochmaben. The council is committed to empower communities to make the most of their assets and the talent of the people who live and work in our region. This report asks members to grant a lease for a further 25 years to Lochmaben Amateur Football Club, which will assist the club in accessing funding to develop their facilities. Members of the Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee had recommended to us that we support this request. Louise Matheson's here to answer any questions arising from the report. Ronnie, first.
Yeah, I should have said it at the previous one. As Gail has mentioned, we really went through this with the area committee and all the support and information and the local knowledge that Stephen brought. So I've no compunction at all in supporting this one, because I think if you see the facilities they've got just now, they're not ideal for a football team, and this would help them take it forward.
Gail? Stephen?
Yeah, no, I mean, we did look at it closely at area committee, but I think for the benefit of the rest of this committee, it might be helpful to provide a little bit more information on the existing lease for which we're providing an extension. Obviously, if it's new and this committee can see the sort of full details of that, that's one thing, but at the moment this is an extension, so for the benefit of the rest of the members of the P&R committee, it might be helpful to know what the nature of their current lease is, so we know what we're actually extending.
I don't have that immediately to hand, Chair. We can certainly provide it to the committee members.
Okay, can we go, oh sorry, Jane?
I was just going to say, if Annandale, Nestdale area committee has been through it with a fine-tooth comb, I'm quite happy with that, so it's fine.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 1, agree 2 and 3? Item 12, Lease Pavillion, Beechgrove Tennis Courts, Moffat. The report asks members to grant a lease for the pavilion at Beechgrove Tennis Courts, Moffat for a period of 25 years to Beechgrove Sports Partnership at a rent of £1 per annum. This is to assist the partnership in developing their facilities in line with their aims and support their sustainability and growth. Members of the Annandale and Nestdale Area Committee were being asked to consider this matter at the meeting of the 25th of January, and I understand they're recommending to us to approve this lease. Members? Okay. Okay. Jane, sorry.
Well, yes, but where's the supporting evidence to show me that this is a priority in terms of our, because there is an impact on the investment on our capital programme, and I have to simply say, although I think it's probably absolutely the right thing to do, I would look at the quantity of money being raised by the club and say to myself, well, I wonder if they could have actually gone off to get some match funding elsewhere as well. My concern is that although it might be the best idea in the world, and it's a good thing to get big investments and substantial investments that actually have an impact. I understand all that, done it ourselves in the stewardship. This does have an impact upon everybody else's priorities, and that's not clear here.
I think, on the monetary side of it, and I think could we discuss that in the next report? This touches on all the issues that you are raising there. So if we can agree, 12. Okay. Moving on to item 13. This report seeks approval of amendments to the land asset class sports pitch capital allocations through to 2018-19, including an allocation to the Beechgrove tennis courts, which would seek to match external funding secured by the club. Richard's here to answer any questions arising from the report. Jane, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Leader. I think in answer to Councillor Maitland's question, the percentage of funds that have been secured by the community group in terms of the overall project are significant. They have been to a number of different funding streams, as you can see in the report, and with our support, I think it would be very difficult and challenging to identify anywhere else they could possibly go for any additional funding. I think they've done a particularly good job in getting to the level that they have. In terms of the priorities and the realignment as proposed in the report, I've tried to provide some context in terms of the current sports pitch allocation. We've already moved forward on a number of the projects that were previously agreed, and I think to a large degree, members, that we've had we're almost a victim of our own success in terms of the significant funding we've drawn down in regard to the 3G sports pitches, which have been such a success that we're having to revisit some of the previously agreed capital budget allocations to try and reflect what has been a significantly diminishing reduction in usage at some of the smaller sites. So we're confident that the realignment of the capital as proposed is the right thing to do, and we put that before members for your consideration and hopefully approval.
Jeff?
terms of the Beechgrove tennis courts in Moffat, the school at Moffat has 2 tennis courts and 2 practice courts which are available for public hire. How closely are the club and the school working in terms of the provision? I know one's at one end of the town, the other's at the other, but are they working together on this?
Yeah, Councillor Lever, the answer to that is yes. The club development programme is closely aligned with the PE provision. They're using both facilities in terms of the grassroots development of the sport, and then the higher end performance coaching is done through the courts at the Beechgrove facility. So yes, the two things are very much aligned. PE staff very much on board working with the club.
Sean?
Yeah, just notice on 3.4, it's just with regards to what we appear to have like a redundant mugger now because of the new facilities at Lochmaben. And I know that you are talking to the ward members and the local community to explore whether or not it should be declared surplus. I would say that, if it goes to that, it might be a community group that takes it over, but if it goes to declaring it surplus, I know the land would be worth something, but is there any way that you can salvage some of the fencing, etc., some of the equipment, and that could be reallocated to another facility?
I'm sure happy to work with Louise's team to identify whether there's any parts of the current provision that remain fit for purpose and can be salvaged for that purpose, definitely.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. June 16, we allocated 75,000 a year for the next 3 years for the sports pitches. Park School was going to be getting a rejuvenated mugger. That's now, if we accept this, now not going to happen unless it's done through the schools capital programme. If the schools capital programme can't afford it, the school's going to be left with a deteriorating facility, and if we agree with this, we're going to have a balance of 26,000 to be spent on sports pitches for the next 2 years, 17-18 and 18-19. Am I reading of the report right?
That's correct, Chair.
If we can do 2 years for sports pitches, 17-18 and 18-19 with £13,000 each. If we can get away with that, why did we allocate £75,000 in June 2016 per year?
I think, Chair, what we've done is we've endeavoured to address the issue that's arisen in regard to Beechgrove and respond to the community's success in gaining funding in terms of that facility. We had a previously agreed programme that we were endeavouring to take forward. As I've mentioned, I think there have been some changes to the way that facilities have been used. Park Mugger specifically, as referred to, is now, because of the success of the 3G in Stranraer, significantly curriculum usage. The rejuvenation of that facility, I'm led to believe, is not significant in terms of pound, shilling and pence. I've already spoken to the Director of Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning about that being part of the education programme. I think it's just a case of endeavouring to be flexible about the resources available to us to reflect the need as we move forward, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks for letting me back in again, Leader. Fortunately, the mugger at Park School is directly outside the council offices in Sederunt, and I can tell you for a fact, when there's heavy rain, the pitch is unplayable. It floods. And what we're being asked to do here is every other sports pitch in Dumfries and Galloway will only have the budget for rejuvenation or work done on it. If we go ahead with the recommendations here, would that be accurate?
The current sports pitch mugger maintenance, repairs and maintenance regime is in place across the piece. that does require some additional rejuvenation that's formed part of this funding profile, and as detailed, particularly in regard to park, that we're not suggesting that doesn't now need to happen. What we're suggesting is that will be addressed through the school's capital programme.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few observations. The Beechgrove tennis courts in Moffat are the responsibility currently of the council, and it would be incumbent upon the council to bring the pitches up to the standard that's required, given it's the largest facility in the region. The group there have done an incredible job of getting some external funding, and I wonder what's the risk if we don't fund it? Does all that funding fall, or do they still get that funding and get to do a half-cop job, and we'll have to pick up the pieces later anyway? What's the risk if we don't give them additional funding? Because, as I say, I think they've done a tremendous job of getting the money that they've secured.
In answer to the question, Councillor Bergero, the funding will need to be returned to the organisations that have allocated that funding, because it's for the purpose of the full rejuve. There is no halfway house, so that funding that has been identified will need to be returned, and the responsibility in terms of the facility will then fall to the council in terms of whether we either find the full funding or B, require to potentially close the facility in the future.
Thanks, Ronnie. I'm just wondering, given the last decision we took just immediately prior to this, the tennis club are now able to go to the Community Wind Farm Benefit Company because they now have a secure lease because of the decision. Can I ask, Richard, was that considered, have you any idea if that was considered by the tennis club? Probably they would be disqualified from applying for it, because I've been through this process myself, and you actually need to show security tenure for the property that you're in. Now they've got that, are they able to go back to the very significant funds in that wind farm development thing? So, whilst generally it's very supportive of the whole thing, and I know the history, and I know the standing and the status of the club, the coach, and everything else that's going on in Moffat, I'm wondering if there's a way we can actually reduce the council's contribution to that using community benefit wind farm. Have they tried it, Gail?
A couple of things, Councillor Ferguson. The previous report referred to the Pavillion. The Pavillion is used by 3 different groups, all of whom have come together to form the sports partnership. So the lease in the previous report was specific to the Pavillion. This is specifically in regard to the tennis courts, and it's only in regard to the tennis club, whereas the previous one was the joint committee of all 3 organisations. So that obviously makes things slightly more complicated in terms of security of tenure.
Can I say I understand the concerns members have expressed, given the significant share of the land asset class that will go to the Beechgrove tennis courts if we accept his recommendations. There might be a way through an amendment as such. Can I therefore suggest that a note in the report under 3.7 that the operation, upkeep and maintenance of the courts is the responsibility of Dumfries and Galloway Council. However, council officers are working with the Beechgrove Club to establish a community sports hub model. I would propose, if you like, that we agree the reprofiling of the Sports Pitches Association, but the funding for the Beechgrove Tennis Court is conditional upon the establishment of a community sports hub, which would reduce the council's liability for the upkeep and maintenance of the courts. And that's clearly the direction the club want to go. It's clearly the way they want to go. Jane?
Thank you, Leader. If I had a list in front of me with the state of muggers and pitches and all the rest of it, and could see what was desperately needing to be done, or wasn't desperately needing to be done, I'd be far happier about reprofiling. But I just don't have that here. I can't tell. I've no idea. Somebody's mentioned Park School. I know that there's a mugger which floods exactly when there's wet. and it sits in puddles. So I just don't know, because I can't tell from this whether I am giving up having that community asset redone within a reasonable time. So I'm rather reluctant, I'm afraid, Leader, to agree to this in its current arrangement, because I don't think I can tell whether we are being fair to the rest of the region. So I'm inclined to say no. I think I want to put this away until I've received that prioritised state of other muggers.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, I understand Councillor Maitland's concern. I think that what we're asking here is that the previously agreed funding profile that identified the areas of most need it be amended with the mitigation as discussed in terms of the either through the school programme with Park or the need to look at some of these other facilities in the light of developments of 3G pitches and enhanced usage, etc. One of the challenges that we do have is that the awards that have been presented and the clubs have been successful in terms of Beechgrove are time bound. We've already extended the closing date for certainly the Sports Scotland Award. Aligned to that, we have the ongoing repairs and maintenance programme on all of the multi-use games areas, and albeit a much reduced capital budget, we do have some resource to endeavour to do some of the rejuvenation work that, for the most part, comes in between 5,000 and 7,000 in terms of the general upkeep and rejuve work for some of these muggers. I think it's about mitigating the risk, Leader, but I do understand Councillor Maitland's concern.
Stephen?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, it's just on your suggested amendment, as it were, just for the sake of clarity, given it may be helpful, Richard, if you could maybe update us as to where the club are at, given the sort of complexities with the arrangement between the club playing surface, as it were, and what they use, and the relationship with the new sports partnership for the Pavillion side of things. Obviously, there'd have to be some kind of working with the different entities to establish some kind of relationship in terms of like the maintenance, obviously, which could be a benefit in terms of a saving for the council. So where are we at with that, and how close is the actual tennis club to that understanding of the responsibility they'll be taking on?
Yeah, and I think the relationship and the partnership elements are critical. The three-way partnership, if you like, in regard to the Pavillion, obviously the interest of the tennis club are very much in regard to supporting that as a pavilion that is fit for purpose and developed that all user groups, the bowls club, the football club, and the tennis club can all use. It might be suggested that without then the investment in the courts to go alongside with that, then there's the tennis club. That might be a challenging situation to address. What I would say in response to the suggestion is that, given the very proactive way the community and the club have gone out to get this to the level of funding they had, and the discussions we've had to date with them in regard to that community sports hub model with a management arrangement and responsibilities thereafter, I think that the proposal presented will be positively received by the tennis club.
Okay, can we go? Sorry, Andy.
Just a bit of clarification for Richard. If I'm reading this right, this is the work that's been needing to be done to reflect the club's status and stroke profile in UK, Scottish-wide, and local tennis world, right? Because I think I'm picking that up right from people I know in Moffat, and it's. I mean, is that the case? I mean, this is if we've got, for example, a club that hosts one of the oldest tennis tournaments in the world, brings in significant amount of tourism and everything else. Does this work ensure that it's at the required standard for the Lawn Tennis Association and the international world and the whole tennis world to actually hold top-class events there?
Yes.
How many members is actually in that club?
My apologies, Leader. 3.6 of the report gives a brief summary of the membership at 125 and all of the different coaching qualifications and the tournaments that are hosted at the venue.
Okay, I'll put a suggestion forward. Can we go with that, or do you want to put something else? Sorry?
Sorry, Chair, it was just with the absolute clarification that that condition of the formation of the Sports Hub is not going to jeopardise the external funding or the progress of anything. Because I think it sends out the wrong message that a community group has done a cracking job of raising £150,000 for a facility which we own and should be maintaining. And I think it sends out entirely the wrong message to community groups that if we don't show incredibly willing to support them.
No, Leader, that wouldn't jeopardise the external funding. I think it would just enhance the direction of travel and would be supported by those funding partners, particularly Sports Scotland.
Jim?
Yeah, it was just really to clarify what was said, that your amendment, suggestion or whatever would be welcomed by the club and it wouldn't have any effect on the outside bodies funding, which I think has been confirmed.
Jane?
I think you proposed a motion, haven't you, Leader? If that is the case, I propose an amendment, which is that we delay this until we receive a comparative list of prioritised needs for the rest of the region with respect to sports pitches and muggers.
Happy to second your amendment.
Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder for Jane's amendment? Okay. That's fine. So we've agreed to note the update position. Sorry, we're noting the update position, and we agree to reprofile the proposed spend of the sports pitch allocation to include Beechgrove tennis courts as detailed in 3.10 of the report, subject to the establishment of a community sports hub and the transfer of responsibility of operation, upkeep and maintenance of the courts to the hub. Thank you. Item 14 of no other business, no urgent business. Item 15, Local Government Scotland Act. Do we agree to adopt a